The morning Adiz Okonkwo left Enugu for Seoul, her mother pressed a worn leather Bible into her hands and said 3 things. Pray every morning before your feet touch the floor. Remember who you are. No man is worth your glory. Adiz had nodded at all 3, kissing her mother's cheeks, first the left, then the right, then the left again, the way Igbo daughters do when they mean I will obey you even when you are not watching. Her father, Pastor Emmanuel Okonkwo, had laid both hands on her head right there in the departure hall of Akanu-Ibiam International Airport, praying in a voice that made strangers turn and bow their own heads instinctively, because when Pastor Okonkwo prayed, the air changed temperature. Father God, let no weapon formed against this our daughter prosper on foreign soil. Let every arrow of immorality, every snare of the enemy, every distraction of the flesh, scatter. In the name that is above every name. Amen, Adiz had said firmly, because she knew if she left him to continue, they would miss their flight. She was 22. She had been accepted to Yonsei University in Seoul on a partial scholarship to study business administration. The rest of the fees covered by her father's church community, who had done a 3-Sunday fundraiser and presented the money in a brown envelope with, "For Ada, our daughter going to conquer," written on the outside in red marker. That envelope had made her cry harder than anything else that day. Harder than her mother's Bible, harder than her father's prayer, because it meant that 23 families believed in her so completely that they had dipped into their own thin pockets for her future. She would not disgrace them. This was the thought she carried onto the plane, held it through the layover in Doha, clutched it still when the descent into Incheon Airport revealed Seoul for the first time. A city of impossible light sprawling beneath the clouds, bridges lacing the Han River like stitches on dark skin. I will not disgrace them. Her dormitory at Yonsei was small and smelled of floor cleaner and someone else's instant noodles. Her roommate, a girl from Busan named Choi Yuna, looked at Adiz's arrival. 2 oversized suitcases, a plastic bag of Nigerian provisions her mother had somehow smuggled past customs, and a small framed print of Psalm 23, with a particular expression of someone recalibrating their expectations in real time. "Hello," Yuna said carefully. "Hello," Adiz said, with the full brightness of someone raised to make others feel welcomed in every room. "I am Adiz. You can call me Ada. I am from Nigeria. I brought chin-chin. It's a snack. Do you want some? Also I have Milo, but I think you have Milo here too." Yuna blinked. Then she laughed. Then she accepted the chin-chin. And just like that, Ada had her first Korean friend. Yuna was the one who introduced her to the others. Park Jisoo, who was studying medicine and had the energy of someone who had consumed 3 espressos since birth. Lee Minji, who was studying fashion design and already had a boyfriend in his 2nd year of military service whom she called every night at exactly 9 p.m. And then there were the 2 other international students. Fatima from Morocco, who was Muslim and shared Ada's general orientation toward God as a daily conversation partner. And Blessing from Lagos, who was also Nigerian but had apparently left Nigeria and all of its associated values somewhere over the Atlantic and embraced Seoul with the enthusiasm of someone who had been waiting her whole life for it. "Seoul will change you," Blessing told Ada on their 3rd day, applying lip gloss in their shared bathroom mirror at the International Student Lounge. "In a good way. You'll see." "I don't want to be changed," Ada said pleasantly. "I like who I am." Blessing gave her a look that was not unkind but was deeply skeptical. "Talk to me in 6 months. The thing about being the only one without a boyfriend is that it is not one large wound. It is 100 small ones, delivered in ordinary moments when no one is even trying to hurt you." It was Minji pausing their study session to take her nightly call, her voice dropping into something soft and private, laughing at something Ada couldn't hear, and Ada pretending to read her textbook with great concentration while feeling, not jealousy exactly, but something adjacent to it. A kind of hunger she didn't have a clean name for. It was Yuna showing her a text from a boy in her Korean literature class. "He said my smile is like the first page of a good book, Ada, I asked that not the most," and Yuna dissolving into giggles while Ada smiled and agreed. Yes, that was lovely, yes, very creative, while something quiet sat heavy in her chest. It was Blessing coming home at 2 a.m. on a Thursday with her earrings missing and her eyes bright and saying, "Don't ask," while also clearly wanting to be asked, and Ada pulling her blanket up to her chin and staring at the ceiling and doing a very specific kind of arithmetic. The kind where you add up all the ways your life is going correctly and still come out feeling like something is missing. She had tried. She wanted to be clear about this, even just to herself. She had tried. There was Kwame, the Ghanaian student in her business strategy class, who was handsome in a way that was almost aggressive about it and who had asked her for coffee in the first month. They had gone to a small cafe near the campus gate and talked for 2 hours, and Ada had enjoyed it genuinely, had laughed at his jokes and appreciated his ambition, until he leaned forward near the end and said, "So, your place or mine after this?" with a casual confidence of someone accustomed to a particular answer. Ada had looked at him with an expression she had inherited from her mother, the expression that said, "I see exactly what you are doing and I am unimpressed by it," and said, "Neither. I don't do that." Kwame had looked confused, then amused, then slightly offended. He had walked her back to the dormitory gate, and they had parted politely and never had coffee again. There was also Daniel, a Korean-American exchange student from Los Angeles who wore vintage band t-shirts and spoke with his hands. He had been patient, kind, 3 dates in before he brought it up, gently, carefully, framing it as a question about compatibility. "I just want to understand where you're coming from," he'd said. "Like, is it religious? Or is it a personal boundary? Or..." "Both," Ada said. "It's both. I believe in waiting until marriage. I know that's not common. I'm not asking you to agree with it. But I'm also not going to change it." Daniel had nodded slowly, his expression the particular shape of a man who respects something he cannot personally work with. Yeah. I really like you, Ada. I do. But I don't think I'm built for that. I'm sorry. Don't apologize," she'd said. "I appreciate your honesty." She had cried in the shower that night. Not because she wanted Daniel specifically, but because she was so tired of the conversation. So tired of being the strange one, the difficult one, the one whose values were treated like an unusual dietary restriction that some people just couldn't accommodate. She was tired of feeling like her faith, the thing that had been the bedrock of her entire existence, the thing her father had built their whole family's life upon, the thing that had held her together through secondary school exams and her grandmother's death and the uncertainty of scholarship applications, was now being processed by boys as a logistical obstacle. She prayed that night with unusual ferocity. "Lord, I am not asking for much. I am not even asking for a boyfriend specifically. I am asking to stop feeling like I am standing outside a glass window watching everyone else eat a meal I don't understand why I can't have. I am asking for one person who will see me. All of me. The chin-chin and the Psalm 23 and the big laugh and the no sex before marriage. And see it all as one whole person and not a series of things to negotiate." She paused. "Amen. Also, please help me pass my operations management midterm. Thank you." Everyone on campus knew of Kim Jae-won before Ada ever laid eyes on him. She knew because Yoona mentioned him once, casually, the way you mention a weather phenomenon, just something that exists in the atmosphere of the campus. "Oh, Kim Jae-won from the economics department? Don't bother," Yoona had said, not unkindly, just informationally. "He's not a boyfriend kind of person." She knew because Blessing had dated him for approximately 3 weeks in the first semester before the previous year's international students had rotated out, and Blessing described the experience with a mix of admiration and exasperation one reserves for a very beautiful, very impractical piece of furniture. "He was incredible, Ada. Like, genuinely. But don't catch feelings. He doesn't do feelings. He does experiences." She knew because Minji's friend from the fashion department had seen him at a party in Hongdae, and the report that came back was that Kim Jae-won at a party was a particular kind of phenomenon, the kind that made rooms reorganize themselves subtly around his presence. So when Ada finally saw him in person, in the university library on a Tuesday afternoon in March, her second semester, she was already theoretically inoculated. He was sitting 2 tables away from her, a half-eaten convenience store sandwich beside his laptop, his head bent over what appeared to be an economics textbook, and she allowed herself to observe neutrally, clinically, the way a botanist might note an unusually vivid flower, very good-looking. Not in the aggressive way Kwame was, not in the studied way Daniel had been. He had the kind of face that seemed slightly surprised by its own arrangement, as if it hadn't quite intended to be that interesting. He looked up because people who are very good-looking develop a sixth sense for being observed, and their eyes met. Ada looked back down at her textbook immediately. She heard him get up. She did not look up. She heard him sit down across from her. She kept not looking up. "You're staring," he said. His English was good, accented, precise, the English of someone who had studied it seriously. "I was observing," Ada said, still reading. "There is a difference." A pause. Then, with what she would later recognize as the beginning of something. "What were you observing?" She looked up then. "I was observing that you are reading Chapter 7 of Mankiw's Principles of Economics, and you have a coffee stain on your left sleeve, and you eat your sandwiches from the middle outward, which is unusual." He looked at his sleeve. He looked at his sandwich. He looked at her with an expression that was, and she would not have expected this, genuinely delighted. "Kim Jae-won," he said, extending his hand. "I know who you are," she said. She shook it anyway. "Adiz Okonkwo. From Nigeria. Business Administration." "I know," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "How?" "You're the one who brought Chin Chin to the International Student Orientation and told Professor Han that his lecture slide had a factual error in front of the whole auditorium." "It did have a factual error." "Yes," he said and smiled. "I know." He was not what she had been told, which she supposed was the thing about people that talk could never quite capture. He was funny, not performing funny, not trying to impress funny, but quick and dry and observational in a way that caught her off guard and made her laugh before she decided to. He was serious about his work in a way that she respected, the kind of serious that didn't announce itself but was just there in the quality of his attention. He brought coffee to their library sessions. She hadn't agreed to library sessions, they had simply begun happening, without asking, because he had noticed on day 2 that she arrived at 2 p.m. and had always just finished lunch and wanted something hot, and he had simply begun bringing it. He did not, initially, flirt with her. This was almost more dangerous. He asked about Nigeria the way people rarely asked. Not, "Is it like in the movies?" or "Do you have electricity?" Yes, she had been asked that. Yes, it had taken everything in her not to give an economics lecture about infrastructure investment, but specific, curious questions. What did her father's church look like on Sunday mornings? What did a nugu smell like in the rainy season? What was the first thing she missed when she got to Seoul? "Pepper soup," she said immediately. "My mother's pepper soup. Nothing here is hot enough. Hot like spicy or hot like temperature." "Yes," she said. He had laughed, and something in his face in that moment, open, unguarded, not performing anything for anyone, had made her stomach do something she told it firmly to stop doing. She knew his history. She was not naive. She had done her due diligence, not in a stalking way, but in the way women learn to do, gathering information from the ambient air of shared spaces, reading the slight changes in Blessing's expression when his name came up, noting the way certain girls in the economics department tracked him across rooms. Kim Jae-won had dated, or been with, the distinction mattering in ways she was carefully not examining, a significant number of women in his 3 years at Yonsei. Not cruelly, as far as she could tell. He was not the kind of player who was also a liar. He was simply the kind of person who had never found a reason to stop. She told herself this was useful information that confirmed her existing assessment. She continued going to the library at 2 p.m. It was Yuna who first said it out loud. "Ada," she said one evening, watching Ada text back a message with a slightly too careful expression on her face. "Are you and J1? "We are study companions," Ada said. "Study companions," Yuna repeated. "Colleagues in academic pursuit." "Ada. What? You smiled at your phone just now." Ada put her phone face down on the desk. "I smile at many things." "You smiled like this," Yuna said, and made an expression that Ada absolutely refused to recognize as accurate. Not like a normal smile. Like you were trying not to smile and the smile was winning. Ada opened her business statistics textbook to a random page. "Good night, Yuna." It happened in April, when Seoul was doing that thing it does in spring where it seems almost unfairly beautiful. Cherry blossoms along the Sinchon streets, the air carrying the particular warmth that isn't quite heat yet but is the promise of it. They had gone for a walk after the library, which had also begun happening without either of them explicitly agreeing to it. They were walking along a quieter street near Yonsei's rear gate, talking about the concept of nunchi that J1 had been explaining to her, the Korean social instinct of reading a room, reading a situation, knowing what is needed before it is said. We have something like that in Igbo culture, she was saying. It is about respect and observation. You do not embarrass someone by making their need loud. You attend to it quietly. Yes, J1 said. Exactly that. He had stopped walking. She stopped too, turning to look at him, and found him looking at her with an expression she had not seen on him before. Not the charm, not the easy confidence, not the studied lightness he sometimes wore like a jacket. He looked earnest, almost uncertain. Kim Jae-won, who was uncertain about nothing, looked uncertain. Ada, he said. Yes. I want to, he paused. Is it okay if I? She understood. She knew she understood because her heart was suddenly extremely loud about the whole situation. She had been kissed before, once at 17, behind the church hall at youth camp by a boy named Chukwemeka who had immediately been consumed by guilt and apologized 4 times and avoided her for 2 months. That had been brief and slightly damp and not particularly revelatory. This was not that. Jae-won kissed her the way she imagined he did everything, with complete and focused attention, as if there was nothing else in the world happening that was more important than this. His hand came up to her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything she'd been told about him, cupping her jaw carefully, like she was something he was afraid of damaging. The cherry blossoms were doing something poetic overhead that she would have noticed more if every single one of her senses hadn't relocated entirely to the point of contact between her mouth and his. She had not known a kiss could feel like a question and an answer at the same time. When they separated, she was quiet for a moment. The city continued around them, a scooter somewhere, someone's music from an open window, the ordinary texture of Seoul's evening. What she felt was not what she had expected. She had expected guilt. The immediate sharp guilt of her upbringing, the voice of her father's sermons, her mother's warnings. She waited for it. What came instead was something more complicated and more honest. She felt awake. As though she had been walking through her life with a faint background hum of numbness and the kiss had simply turned it off. Left her in the loud, startling quiet of being fully present in her own body. And then, a beat later, the guilt arrived. Softer than expected, but present. She stepped back gently. I need you to understand something about me, she said. Her voice was even. She was proud of this. I am not someone who, I don't do things halfway. If I am in something, I am in it. And there are things I believe that I have not compromised and will not compromise. Jae-won looked at her carefully. He had his hands in his jacket pockets now, and he was listening in that particular way he had, fully, without preparing his response in the middle of her speaking. I don't have sex before marriage, she said. I know what you're going to say. I know your history. I know what people say about you. I'm not judging any of it. I'm telling you who I am so you can make a decision with correct information. A long pause. Okay, he said. She blinked. Okay. Okay, he repeated. I hear you. Thank you for telling me. That's all you're going to say? He looked at her, and something in his expression was very quiet and very serious. What do you want me to say? That it's a problem? It's not my problem to have. It's your life. He paused. I want to know if I can take you to dinner on Saturday. Ada stood there in the April evening with cherry blossoms very unnecessarily floating around them and thought, Lord, you have a very dramatic sense of occasion. Yes, she said. You can take me to dinner. The months that followed were a particular kind of education that no university curriculum covered. She learned that Kim Jae-won, who everyone had described as emotionally unavailable, was in fact emotionally fluent. He had simply never encountered someone who required the full vocabulary. She learned that he had grown up in a household with a father whose emotional register was limited to approval and disapproval, and that this had produced in him a man who understood people intuitively but had never quite trusted the understanding enough to stay. She learned that the parade of women in his past was not conquest but, in some way she recognized without quite having language for it, a search, conducted badly perhaps, but a search nonetheless. She learned these things because she asked. Ada was the kind of person who asked. He learned her too. He learned that her faith was not a performance or a cultural residue or a set of rules she was enduring. It was the architecture of how she understood the world, load-bearing and structural, not decorative. He learned that she was fiercer than she appeared, that she had the particular courage of someone who had been taught from childhood that her values were worth protecting even when protection was costly. He learned that she laughed with her entire body, that she overcorrected her homesickness by cooking jollof rice every time she felt it threatening, that she prayed out loud in Igbo when she was really worried about something, and in English when she was just checking in. He did not push. This was the thing she had not expected, and the thing that undid her most completely. He simply did not push. He held her hand. He kissed her, sometimes, in ways that made the cherry blossom evening seem like a rough draft. He stayed. She did not know how to make sense of him in her existing framework, so she built a new one. Her friends noticed. Ada, Blessing said one Sunday afternoon, watching her get ready to meet J1. "You're glowing." "I moisturize properly," Ada said. "You're glowing, Ada. This is not shea butter. This is a man." Blessing. "I'm not saying anything. I'm just observing." Blessing raised both hands. I see you. You seem happy." Ada looked at herself in the mirror for a moment, at her carefully done edges, her dangling gold earrings her mother had sent in a care package, her deep brown skin against the warm yellow of her blouse. She did look, she admitted privately, like someone who had been sleeping better. Like someone who had been walking through the world with more of her body inhabited. "I am happy," she said, with the particular surprise of someone discovering this as she said it. The girls' conversations about their boyfriends had always been a subtle low-grade ache. The moments of exclusion she'd managed by being a good listener and never revealing how much she was performing the ease. She had sat through Minji's stories and Yuna's complaints and Blessing's dramatic retellings and smiled and asked the right questions and felt, somewhere behind it all, the specific loneliness of being outside a language everyone else was fluent in. Now she had things to contribute. Small things. But hers. The way J1 had waited 40 minutes in the cold outside her building because she'd lost track of time studying and he hadn't wanted to interrupt her. The way he remembered details she'd mentioned weeks earlier, the name of her secondary school best friend, her father's favorite him, and brought them up in ways that made her feel fully heard. The way he'd once, without announcement, learned to say, "I'm grateful for you" in Igbo from an online tutorial and deployed it so badly mispronounced that she'd laughed until she cried. And his face had been so pleased at making her laugh that she'd had to look away from it. These were the things she brought to the Sunday afternoon conversations now. And Yuna and Minji and Blessing received them with a particular warmth of people who had been hoping for exactly this and were very graciously not saying, "We told you so." Only Blessing said it, once, quietly, when the others had gone to get more food. "Told you Seoul would change you." "I haven't changed," Ada said. "I've just expanded." Blessing smiled into her drink. "Same thing, babe." It was a Friday night in August when everything shifted. They were in his apartment, which was where they sometimes studied now, the library having given way to his small, precise apartment in Sinshin, which smelled like his coffee and his books and something she now, embarrassingly, thought of as specifically him. They had been watching a film that Ada had picked, a Nigerian film, because J1 had said he wanted to understand where she came from in every way available to him, and she had been translating the Igbo portions in real time, leaning close to him on the couch, her legs tucked beneath her. The film had ended. The room was quiet. Seoul outside the window was doing its nighttime shimmering. And somewhere in the stillness, something had changed in the quality of the air between them. She was aware of him in a way that had been building for weeks and that she had been managing, carefully, firmly, with a precision she was now finding required increasingly more effort. She was aware of his arm along the back of the couch behind her, of the particular warmth of being close to someone your body has decided, without asking your permission, that it wants. She stood up and went to the window, looking out at the city lights. "Ada," he said from the couch. "I know," she said. A pause. "What do you know?" She turned to look at him. He was watching her with that full, careful attention she still wasn't entirely used to. J1, who had spent years perfecting the art of lightness and distance, looking at her as though she was the thing he'd been trying to find the word for. "I know what I feel," she said. "And I know what I believe. And I know those two things are having a very loud argument right now." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something she hadn't expected. "What does your faith actually say?" Not what people around you say it says. What do you understand it to mean? She looked at him, surprised. Why do you ask like that? Because, he said carefully, I think there's sometimes a difference. And I think you're someone who knows the difference. She sat down on the windowsill, thinking. Outside, Seoul hummed its ordinary nighttime self. It says that this, she gestured between them, is designed to exist within a covenant. Within marriage. Not because the body is shameful, but because the intimacy is sacred, and sacred things deserve a container worthy of them. She paused. That's what I believe. Not the fear version. Not the you will be ruined version my secondary school pastor used to preach. The it deserves to be honored version. J1 was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I've never thought about it that way. Most people haven't. Another silence. He got up and came to stand near her at the window, not touching her, just present. The Seoul night framed behind him. I'm not going to pretend, he said finally, that what I feel right now isn't difficult. That would be lying. And you deserve honesty. He met her eyes. But I'm also not going to ask you to be someone other than who you are. I don't want that. I don't want a version of you that has been talked out of herself. Adiz Okonkwo, who had been raised to be strong and who was very good at being strong, felt something in her chest crack open in the most gentle and unexpected way. J1, she said. Yes. I think I love you, she said. Which is very inconvenient, and I would like to lodge a formal complaint with God about the timing. He looked at her for a moment. Then he laughed, really laughed. The laugh she had decided some weeks ago was her favorite sound in Seoul, possibly in the world. And then he said quietly, I think I love you too. And I have genuinely no idea what to do about it. She called her mother on a Saturday morning, which was not unusual. What was unusual was the 15-minute pause before she called, during which she sat on her bed composing her thoughts like a woman preparing a legal argument. She didn't say everything. She said, there is a man. He is Korean. He is kind and serious and makes her laugh. He is patient. Her mother was quiet in the way her mother was quiet when she was absorbing significant information. Does he know God? Her mother asked finally. He is learning, Ada said carefully. He asks questions seriously. He doesn't dismiss what I believe. Another pause. And he is patient with you? With your values? Yes, Mama. Her mother was quiet for another long moment. Ada heard the faint sound of enugu in the background. A distant generator, children somewhere, the ordinary music of home. Adiz, her mother said finally. Your grandmother used to say, a man who respects your altar will not desecrate your home. I am not saying anything else. I am just saying that. After they hung up, Ada sat with that for a long time. It was October when she made her decision. She made it not because she had been pressured or worn down or convinced out of her values. She made it because after 8 months of knowing Kim Jae-won, the real one, the one underneath the reputation, the one who had learned, I'm grateful for you, in badly pronounced Igbo, and who had read 2 books she'd recommended about Igbo culture, and who had met Blessing and Yuna at a dinner and been genuinely warm with them, and who had, one evening, sat quietly with her while she cried about being homesick without trying to fix it, just stayed. She had arrived at a place of clarity that felt entirely her own. She had prayed about it. At length. In both Igbo and English. She had sat with a question honestly, not looking for the answer that was easiest or the answer that would please everyone, but the answer that was true. What she arrived at was this. She was ready. Not because she had surrendered anything, but because she had found the thing her faith had actually been describing. Intimacy held within genuine covenant. And the covenant, though it was not yet the formal legal one, was real. It was built of 8 months of being fully known and fully stayed with. She understood now the difference between her faith's actual meaning and the fear dressed as faith that she had sometimes confused it with. She also understood, with a particular knowledge that comes from being truly present in your own life, that she had been waiting for herself to be ready, not merely for a man to be worthy. And she was ready. She told him this on a quiet Tuesday evening in his apartment, without ceremony, directly, in the way she did all important things. He looked at her for a long moment. Are you certain? He asked. Not. Not because I'm asking you to reconsider. Because I want you to be certain for yourself. I am certain, she said. I have thought about nothing else for 2 weeks and prayed about it for longer, and this is my decision, made by me, about my own life. He nodded slowly. Okay, he said. Okay, she said. She had thought, if she was honest, that it would be either transcendently beautiful or quietly disappointing. The binary her imagination had offered when she'd allowed herself to imagine it at all. What it was, in fact, was neither of those and somehow more than both. It was nervous. She was nervous, in a way that was not fear but the heightened aliveness of being at the edge of something. And he was careful with her nervousness in a way that did not make it embarrassing. He moved slowly in the way of someone who understood that this moment had weight. There were moments that were awkward and tender and human in the way real things always are. There were moments of genuine closeness. Not the movie version of closeness but the actual version, where two people who know each other are present with each other in the most undisguised way available to human bodies. What she had not expected was how much it felt like a conversation. The whole language of it. Not the frantic, context-free version she had absorbed from the half-glimpsed cultural noise of movies and Blessing's dramatic retellings, but something slower and more mutual, where what mattered was not performance but presence. Afterward, she lay in the quiet of his room, Seoul outside the window, his arm around her, and she waited again for what she would feel. What she felt was whole. Not changed in the way she'd feared. Not hollowed out or compromised or lesser. Whole in the way of someone who had finally let all the parts of herself exist in the same room. She also felt, she would admit to no one but herself and possibly God, extremely hungry. Can we order food? She said into the quiet. Jae-won made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a sigh of profound relief. I was waiting for you to say something first. We can always eat, Ada said. Yes, he said, reaching for his phone. We can always eat. December came, and with it the first Seoul winter Ada had experienced. A cold that was different from Enugu's cool harmattan season, more absolute, more serious about itself. She bought a thick padded coat and wore it with the bright-colored head wraps her mother sent and became, as Blessing observed, the most fashionable person to ever survive a Korean winter. Her grades remained excellent. She had decided, somewhere in the second half of the year, to add a minor in international relations, because she had discovered that she was good at understanding the way different worlds negotiated with each other, the spaces where cultures reached across their distances toward something shared. She called her parents regularly. She told them carefully, on a December video call with both her mother and father present, that she was in a relationship with a Korean man named Kim Jae-won. Her father asked to see him. Jae-won sat beside her on the screen and greeted her father in his precise English and said, with a particular earnestness she had come to understand was his real register underneath everything else. Sir, I respect your daughter very much. I would like to know more about your family and your faith. Her father had looked at him for a long, evaluating moment. Then he had said, Tell me about yourself. It had been a beginning. On a Saturday in late December, Ada and Jae-won walked along the Han River. Ice at the edges. The city on both sides, brilliant in the winter light. She had her hand in his, her breath making small clouds in the air. She thought about the girl who had left Enugu 12 months earlier with a Bible and 2 suitcases and her father's prayer settling into her hair. She thought about every version of herself this year had required. The one who had felt left out in every conversation about love, the one who had stood her ground with Kwame and Daniel and everyone who had wanted her to negotiate herself, the one who had sat in a library with a chip-eating economist and not known she was standing at the beginning of something. She thought about her mother's words. A man who respects your altar will not desecrate your home. She was still herself. Every value, every belief, every thread of who she was, intact. She had not been changed in the way Blessing had predicted, not flattened or transformed. She had expanded, just as she had said. She had grown in the direction of herself. What are you thinking? Jae-won asked. I'm thinking, Ada said, watching the river, that rivers don't meet gently. The Han and the Niger are very far apart. But they both go somewhere. He was quiet, the way he was when he was actually listening rather than preparing to respond. I think, she continued, that I am still learning what it means to be from one place and alive in another. And I think, she paused. I think that's okay. I think that's the whole point. He brought her hand up and pressed his mouth to her knuckles, briefly, in the cold. I think so too, he said. The Han River moved beneath its ice, going somewhere. The city rose on all sides, enormous and indifferent and beautiful. Adiz Okonkwo from Enugu, daughter of Pastor Emmanuel, scholarship student, lover of pepper soup and correct bibliography formatting and early morning prayer, stood in the Seoul winter and was, without qualification, home.